I'm super, super excited. I know we've been preparing this for quite some time now, and
Yes,
now it's already happening. So super excited.
perfect. For everyone who's joining and listening, thank you so much for making it and for taking the time. We're so happy to have you here, and we hope this will be useful, informative. We're trying to be as honest and transparent and as possible, and we'll answer any questions you have at the end. So please, if you have any questions, just post it on the chat or in the QA section, and we'll come to that at the end. So, John, let's start by introduction. So, for those who don't know me, my name is Mai Medhat. I'm the founder of Ginni AI and second-time founder. I previously founded Eventtus and I led the company until the exit in 2021. And I just started Ginni AI earlier this year. And yeah, what we do as Jenny is we use AI to help B2B sales teams optimize their sales process, build a strong sales foundation early on so it scales with them, and we unlock some patterns and insights using AI. So this is what we do. John, mic to you. Introduce
Uh,
yourself.
Thanks, my I'm super excited as I've said earlier. My name is John. To those people that don't know me, I've been in the UAE for the last 20 years. I have started a new company called OCTA. OCTA, it's an account receivable platform. So we help companies to streamline their receivables from contract to cash. We are also offering financing and also debt collection. Prior to Okta, I started a company called Denarii. So think about like a TransferWise for the Middle East. So helping expats to send money to their home country cheaper, better with no hidden charges. And then acquired by Careem in 2022, and something that I'm excited to share to you this time.
Perfect. So how did you actually end up selling your first company? I think this is the question everyone wants to know.
Yeah,
Tell
so
us the story.
I I have shared this to a couple of few people when I was doing this founders breakfast for the last 1 year. But the acquisition really started not on the acquisition date. So I basically had a relationship with Mudasir and Kareem even before or while I'm actually starting Denari. And I had a call with him during the early days of Denari, and since then I've been giving him an update about what we're doing, and not only to him, but of course to the family and friends and to the VC side, right? And then in 2022, one of my VC or one of my investors, his name is Zach, asked me if I would like to have a face-to-face conversation or in-person meeting with Mudasir. And of course, I said yes. And it was breakfast, lunch in between. And then we're having breakfast or lunch. And then he asked me two things, right? So he asked us, like, hey, John, what's the most difficult thing in building a company? The two things that comes to my head was the first one is building a company that's in a regulated business. So remittance is a heavy, heavy regulated industry. So that's one of the first answer that I've said. And the second one was actually fundraising. Fundraising during that time, because I'm a first time founder, I never kind of knew how to fundraise before. So for me, it's like super, super difficult given that I'm a technical founder, right? I love building. I don't like asking money for people. Um, and those are the two things that I kind of answered. And then he asked me, it's like, hey, and Mudassir is a very charismatic guy. I mean, and our founder, right? And he told me about his vision about the upcoming Careem Pay during that time of providing remittance, and making more easier or life simple for the user of Careem. And that's kind of where he offers us the resource to build or to power Careem Pay using Denarii from the remittance side. I didn't say yes initially, right? I was like, yeah, we'll have a look at it, and happy to review it with the team. And then after that, I definitely communicate to the internal team, and things kind of started to work on, right? And in fact, we do have received multiple offers of acquisition. So there are like three acquisition from or two from international and three locally, and one in fact from one of the governments. And we weighed in of course the pros and cons. And given as a founder, I have a fiduciary duty to my stakeholders, to the internal team, of what would be the best outcome for the scenario. We opt in with Mudasir and Careem. And the reason for that is definitely a lot of things, but the first one was the team, right? The team are very well taken care of. They are actually working in Careem now. They're super happy. And of course, the mission, right? And that's the reason actually we opt in with Careem. In fact, if you actually go to Careem now, Denarii is almost like a household name within Careem
Yes.
family, because it definitely provides bigger value to what they're currently doing in Careem Pay.
Yeah.
And if I knew that that's how valuable Denarii was, before the acquisition, I would probably have a
Ask it for more.
bigger,
Yes.
probably ask
Actually,
for more during the
yeah.
acquisition. But that's I would say the outcome of how did I end up selling Denarii. And yeah, I'm also interested, Mai, like how did you end up selling like Eventtus eventually?
Yeah, I have a similar story. But before we jump into this, I think I want to ask you a question, because you mentioned that you knew actually Mudassir before that,
Yeah.
and you had this connection. So which is very similar to my experience. So we sold Eventus to Bevy, and I had an experience. So Bevy is a sister company to Startup Grind, founded by the same founders, same teams. It's like the tech arm for Startup Grind. And Startup Grind was one of our customers before that. So we worked with them. We did like probably 10 of their biggest events across the world. And so we had this 3 years relationship before that. So I think relationships and networking is very, very important in a lot of things, but especially for exiting a company. So I want to highlight that and would love to hear your point about that before I jump and tell in the Eventus story.
No, I definitely completely agree with that, right? I think if I get it right, I mean the way, as I always said, right? I mean when it comes to building businesses or building valuable relationship, I think the thinking, Maya, is actually building lines and not dots, right? So during that time, it didn't really happen like as a transactional per se, right? It took a lot of time to try to build out that momentum of that outcome, right? And so, as I always said, to build a relationship, you need to build lines and not dots.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think networking is very critical for a lot of things, and having good relationships and networking and connections, even with competitors, I think it's a very positive thing. So stay closer to them, market change and things happen, and you never know what happens
I
after
think I'm,
that.
I'm a really stubborn founder. I remember when I started Denarii, I've met every single every single like player who does remittance in the market. And then the reason for that, it's like in my opinion, you don't really compete in the early days, right? I think the idea is to survive first. So don't die just to survive, right? And I think the competition will only happen once you already start hitting the ceiling, or reaching into the optimums, market share, if you like, when the when the competition will start. But I think during the early days, like every founder in the ecosystem talks to each other and kind of learn as well and exchange notes, and yeah, so that's also important.
Yeah, of course. Um, yeah, I think exactly what I did, like speaking to other founders and learning from each other. I think it's very, very important, and especially for first-time founders. And I can argue for second-time founders, because you need this grounding and you need to get inspired and know what's out there actually. So you always have to be up to date. So I think the Eventus story is, I think there's a lot of similarities in your story. So what we did, so Eventus, for those who doesn't know, Eventus is an event networking platform. So we built mobile apps and other solutions for conferences and exhibitions. And we were doing great. We worked with all the big names in the UAE, in Egypt, and Saudi, and we scaled it globally. So Startup Grind was one of our biggest customers in the US and UK. And then COVID happened in 2020. So for a very heavy in-person business, so it was like a big moment for us. And I remember at this time, because I met Derek before, because when we used to do their conferences, I used to just like fly to Redwood City and I meet the team, I meet him, and we have he's a great guy and we have lovely conversations and I learn a lot from him. So we had this connection already. So I don't remember who started this, but we started talking. So chatting from a founder to founder, we're working in the same space and we're like exchanging ideas. And I remember during COVID, it was like, this was very common. So I got a lot of calls from other founders and you're just like sharing how are you handling this? How do you feel about it? Because it was a very tough and emotional time for everyone, basically. So we started talking, and that was April 2020, May 2020. And we were still in transition phase. So we had this idea to build a virtual platform, but we haven't built it yet. And we wanted to build like mobile app first approach to differentiate ourselves from everyone in the market. And we started talking, and there was like clearly a synergy between what Bevy is building and what we are building. And actually, it was like complementing what they are building. And I remember at this time, Derek actually offered to for us to join Bevy, for Eventtus to join Bevy, and we build it all together. And at this time, it was like the first time that really hits thinking about an exit, and it came across like few times before that, but it was the first time it's real. It's like there's an offer on the table. And I did the typical mistake for first time founder. I asked it for a crazy valuation and it didn't happen. I think looking back now to that time, I think we weren't ready
Mhm.
as founders, as team, as company, and they weren't ready as well. So it was a bigger company. They mature and everything, but COVID was very tough time and there was a lot of changes and a lot of things on stake. And so we stayed in touch. And I think, as you said, like magic happens. So once you have this idea of an exit, somehow you start, I don't know what happens, but like the universe does its magic. And we also ended up with like multiple acquisition offers. Three were very solid that we are considering as well. And we ended up choosing Bevy. So what happened is like fast forward, I think 6 months after this first conversation, we stayed in touch and they were on our email list. So Derek was receiving our like updates and
Mhm.
product updates and everything. And I was on their mailing list as well. So I saw an announcement for their Series C funding. And it happened at the same time we are sending one of our newsletters and we were launching like big features and it was like going very, very well. And I think Derek replied and said like, hey, time to catch up. And we just had a call. And so I was thinking about the same thing. Like now there is this big round, probably they are more ready to, they have more funding and it might be a better actually time to continue that conversation from 6 months ago. And it happened. So we had this conversation. It was very friendly and very founder to founder. And we found synergy and we discussed everything. And yeah, we decided to sell to them. So this is the story of Eventus.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love when founder talks to founder. I think this notion of like when founder talks, like it's the real conversation happens, right? And you don't hear these things from the outside, but I think that's amazing. And I think that shows Mai, right? That's it's not really like again, it's not starting from the transaction perspective, right? I think
Yes,
it shows that it came from a multiple touch points and that value touch points eventually becomes the acquisition story. And it's kind of
yeah.
almost interesting like how this type of things happens kind of almost the same, like similar in a similar way.
I actually have a question for you. Like, how did you handle uh, your stakeholders? How many investors did you have at this time?
Ooh, I can't. I didn't count. I think there are lots, right? I think one of the challenge or like rookie mistake that I did during the early days was putting everyone in the cap table, right? So it's like, you sign for a convertible note, $25,000, you are part of the cap table, or $5,000, you're part of the cap table, right? So managing that one was so difficult to get an approval. But of course, not everyone are actually like happy about it, right? Even for myself. But I think um, majority of my investors were very supportive, right? I could actually have a different outcome, right? If we didn't actually had an opportunity to sell the company. Uh, but I think it's just happened that it's the right time and in the right place. So the way we managed was, we as we send this regular update to the investor, we provided like the optionality of the acquisition, and then the reflection of why we've chosen Careem from that part, and then the following next steps, right? And that's basically how I did manage
Was
it.
was it hard to actually tell them because you were, I don't know, like 3 years company at that time?
That is correct. Yeah. So we
Yeah.
did,
So
did we did raise
was it
more
hard to
than
actually tell them that we're selling now than sticking for longer time?
I think that's one of the reflection, the kind of post-mortem side, right? I think that's one of my unfinished business when I saw the company was like, I wish I've continued it, right? But of course there are some challenges that's actually part of that journey. But yeah, to put a context, we did run the company for about 3 years, right? I ran a series of investment or convertible note investment. Um, and and the last 6 months of the business were super, super difficult, right? Given that we are in the regulatory space, compliance, licensing were very, very tough, especially in the remittance side. So I only have options either, we switch off the story of Denarii, and or find as a a responsible accountable founder, or with with a fiduciary duty, figured out what would be the best for everyone. And 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 that's when we start looking for who would be the best to basically acquire us. So it was not difficult to convince the investor. Majority were basically happy about it. But of course, it's a messy process because of multiple founders in the cap table. How about you? How did you end up like convincing your investors, or even the internal team, or even your team? Like, how did you structure it? How did you break the news?
Um, Great question, especially about the team, because this is a totally different story. So with investors, I think it was, let me tell you this. So I have this like big story with the exit. So it was so stressful part of my life to an extent that I woke up one morning and I literally couldn't move my fingers. And I, uh, I put it in a cast for 6 weeks. And eventually, it wasn't like I couldn't move them. Literally, I couldn't type on the keyboard. I couldn't like sign. I couldn't do anything. And eventually, I was told that was coming from stress. So
Oh,
this is how stressful it was. It was
mm,
so hard. It was very because you it's a big decision. So
mm,
I think, and it's a very big emotionally also on
mm.
founders, and
Yeah.
it's a big responsibility. So everyone from the investors, they trusted you with their money and investments, and they believed in you and everything. And you have this big vision for the company. You have the team, and they have lives and responsibilities and everything. And it's part of like the accountability you have. So it was a lot at stake, and negotiation is very tough when you negotiate like price and you negotiate a lot of things, and it's we could spend an hour just on how difficult is the paperwork and the negotiation process goes. I don't think we have enough time for this now, but literally like you can say something or you can do something or you can like I don't know, you can like insist on something and everything blows up. So you can
Mm,
the whole deal can go away because you did something wrong or you said the
mm,
wrong word or one of the investors they don't want to sign or whatever it is. So
mm,
and also you have the feeling that you need to push to get the best outcome for everyone. So it was very hard to find that balance and it's very stressful. I think I was actually very lucky to have some of our investors were very, very supportive.
mm.
They were actually helping me throughout the process. They were available all the time. We had calls because Bevy is a US company. It's based in West Coast, so time difference was very bad. So we had this like very late at night calls or very early in the morning. So I think some investors were very supportive and few were very hard to manage and very hard to get on board. It,
Yeah.
it's it's not that they didn't want to sell, but they were asking for certain things that was very hard to get, and some of it doesn't make sense or it doesn't work as part of the agreement we already have. So that was a very hard phase. With the team, I think it's a different story. Like I didn't expect. I remember I had this plan, communication plan. So once we finalized everything, and that's part of like the final, not due diligence, but like the final stages when we were like about to sign the LOI. I remember like I wanted to get my leadership team on board and let them know about it and also to meet them and everything. And I had this plan to tell the leadership first and then to like have the managers know about it and then the rest of the team know about it. And I remember I had my leadership team and I was telling them about it. And then instead of like everyone was happy, I was very surprised to find that some people are actually concerned about it because they didn't know what does it mean for them, which
Mm,
which was a great lesson for me. Like
mm,
even like I consider that I had an answer for that, but when employees hear acquisition, it's not usually a positive thing for them. So I think one of the reasons we decided to go with Bevy is we had synergy and we had synergy on the team. And one of my requirements was like everyone on the team, like literally everyone on the team, they will join Bevy. And I negotiated their packages and everything myself.
yeah.
So I made sure they are like
Mm,
very well compensated and very secure. But still, like when you break the news to them, it's not what you expect,
yeah. No, of
which
course. No, I
was
completely agree. I think one of the thing, Mai, that actually helped me throughout the acquisition or up to the acquisition was this like regular communication with the investors. Right? That when I started um Denarii, I never stopped communicating about not even the highlights, even the lowlights of like, hey, this thing is not working because of one, two, three. Kind of helps me soften the decision making from the acquisition side. And
yeah.
that's the reason majority of the investors were very, very supportive of, we will be rallying, whatever the decision that you would made. And hence, I mean, that learning actually, I kind of use it in Okta, and I'll share that later on. But I think one of the most important part, and again, this is something that I've also learned during the Denari part, was it's very, very important the people around you, especially through these tough times. Um, and like from the acquisition, it's I always said from the people that I talked to after the acquisition was, or even before that one, was that the news outside looks like like singing and dancing and it's beautiful, but how it was done and the structure was really, really like so difficult, right?
Yes.
And I think it's very important to have the right people around you. And I'm very, very fortunate with good investors, good angel investors, in VC as well. That helps me overcome. And Careem were very, very supportive as well. Like after I joined Careem, though for me it's like it's so difficult, like to go back in the corporate world. Um, and maybe the question is like, how did you manage the transition, Mai?
That was my next question, basically. Because for myself, somehow had an identity crisis, I can say. It was very tough from a founder. I ran Eventtus for 9 years to the acquisition, so I think I was somehow used to the driving seat. If I see something, if I want to do something, I just tell the team and we do it if it makes sense and everyone. So it's like taking very fast decisions and it just happened and we can shift gears and that's okay. But transition to a larger company where I can't say Bevy is like a corporate, it's not a corporate, it's still a startup. I learned a lot from joining that team, seeing how like a fast-paced company they work and the processes they have and the execution and the team as well. They had like some great people on the team, but at the same time, I see some things and I want to do it. I have this idea, let's do it, let's implement it right now. But it doesn't work like that. You need to navigate, you need to work through everyone. They have their own priorities, and you need to find your way to convince people to do it, which was, it wasn't easy at the beginning.
No, I think for me it's not. I mean, I wouldn't say difficult because I came from the corporate world before I even start Denarii and then went back to the corporate side, right? I wouldn't say Careem is already kind of still a startup. I mean, in a sense, but I think they're big companies already, right? There's already processes in place, and I think kind of the same challenges, right? I mean, when you're building something like you want everything like needs to be done like now, like moving to a corporate or a company where there's a process already in place. It's like, hey, you need to go to multiple meetings and then get an approval for every single thing that you need to do. It's definitely very, very difficult and then very, very challenging. Um,
Did you
yeah.
know that you will going to start a new company or start another startup anyway? Was it the plan?
I always think, I mean, after, it's so funny. It's like after the acquisition, I've already like sent to one of my closest advisor and said like, I think I'm going back. But I just like literally just like sold the company. I was like, John, come on, like spend some, take some day off. I think to be honest with you, Maya, I was like, I have thought about it, right? And I didn't knew what would be the idea, but I think I like building companies, right? I like to be on that edge of the uncertainty of whether the product's gonna work or not. And then the aha moments after you solve it, and then people start using it. I think that's for me, that's the addicting part of company building, if you like, right?
Yeah.
So to answer your question, yes, I knew it that I'll be back in company building. I didn't, and that for me, it was more on making sure that everything's in order, right? I stayed in Careem for about 15 months to enable the acquisition terms, right? Kind of make sure that the family are covered, right, and everyone are looked after, and then start thinking about okay, what would be the interesting thing to do. How about you? Have you thought about it?
I think yes. I think I knew it from the beginning. I was at some point going to start a new company. I didn't know when or how or all of the details wasn't figured out, but I think yes, once a founder, always a founder. I think this is part of what we do. I think this is the part like I enjoy the most, like building, solving, selling, fixing things. Even like the hard part of like fundraising relationships with investors, with customers and everything. I think the hard part was actually coming up with the idea and the team because I have seen how hard it is or how hard it was the first time. So now you want to start on like good ground. You want to start with like the right team, the right idea. You want to set up everything for success. And I think that was uh, the biggest thing on my mind on choosing like the idea and choosing the team.
That'd be interesting. And maybe going into that ideation part. I mean, I can tell you like how did I start, but how did Ginny ended up like, you know what, I'm going to start in this space and going to solve this pain point.
It actually started with so that was so I joined Bevy for a year, and then I decided that I will take a year for myself, for my family, just like doing nothing at all. And by the end of that year, I was like killing myself. I need to do something. I need to go back. So I was looking at ideas, exploring what's out there. And it was the same time like ChatGPT came up and all the AI hype. So I knew I wanted to do something with AI. I knew I want to do SaaS and B2B. So these are the three key elements I wanted to solve. And one thing I started to actually consider is from my Eventtus experience and the time I spent at Bevy, what are the challenges that we have seen and we can relate to, we can solve? And I'm the kind of founder that I need to like what I'm building or what I'm working on. I need to like it. I need to be passionate about it. I need to know a lot of information about it, but also always learning new things and around the market, like how the extended market and competition and how everyone is looking at the market. So sales was like, I don't know. It was the first thing that came to mind because sales is as I'm also a technical co-founder, not technical, but like I studied computer engineering. I started Ginni Eventtus. I actually built the first version of the mobile app, and then I moved into the business side. So I found my passion into sales, customer success, operations, fundraising, and all of that. So I did everything else. So I found myself on this part. So managing a sales team for 9 years. And then even at my time at Bevy, I was working with the sales team directly and seeing how hard it is to learn about sales if you don't have this background, if you haven't like studied or experienced that before in another company. It's very, very hard and it's very painful. And there's a lot of trial and error, and you try things and it doesn't work. You hire someone and you believe this is that person that will build my sales motion and will scale and you will have this 10 million ARR in 3 months, and then it doesn't happen. And so this is like the pain point. This is exactly why we started Ginni, and we want to help other founders to actually fast track all the learnings, and they have a strong foundation from early on.
I completely agree with you. Even in OCTA, we're still figuring it out. Like our sales part, and it's difficult, right? And it's a trial and error, like you've said, right? It's what playbook works, what structure works. And for me, the way I see these things is like the number of times you try, right? It's the number of chances you'll get successful. So the speed of execution is very, very important, not only in
Yes.
sales, but in anything that we do for company building, right? Given that we only have a kind of small, kind of minute resources and get a maximum output from that is very, very important. I love the story of how did you end up.
Thank you. I think, yeah, it's a critical one. It's definitely a crowded space, which is we're very aware of that. So we're trying to be differentiated. We also have this relationship with the Middle East. So we have a lot of network and connections over there. So we're supporting Arabic as part of this because we found out since we launched, like the first question I got on LinkedIn is, does it support Arabic? Does it support Arabic? Does it support Arabic? Because all the because all the global competition, like call intelligence is nothing new. But like everyone focused on the US English speaking countries. So we sought an opportunity and we're optimizing for that. How did you come up with OCTA?
It's a good question. So,
And how did you end up with like the founding team? I think this is also a very important question.
No, definitely. And I love telling this story, right? Because when I decided that, hey, I would like to go back in company building, it was very, very intentional. It's a very thoughtful process in regards of the people that I would love to involve with. The process of ideating the business that we would like to go to, it went through a multiple series of, is this the right idea? Is this the right idea? So before you even started OCTA, I used to do these things, founder breakfast, where I met a lot of founders in the ecosystem. Like I ask and I beg them like, hey, let's have a catch up. I would like to hear your story and exchange notes. And throughout these founder stories, I've kind of picked up, few problems or pain points in running a business, right? So from seed stage to Series A to Series B. And it always from the collection perspective per se, right? I started from the debt collection side. Access to capital was one of the challenge that they were telling. Um, and before even in going back on that one, kind of one step back, when I started, like, I would like to start a company building, I said, like, I would like to build something bigger, right? Bigger than Denarii and something that's become, global. And the reason for that was I started Denarii regionally and acquired by a regional player. I think I have a chance to build something much more meaningful, bigger than Denarii that can become a global. So that was kind of one of the first peak of starting a company. And the second one is, if it's global,
I love this one, by the way.
yeah.
Great mission. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the second one was like, if it's global, what would be an ideal pain point or problem to solve that can start from local, but eventually can be global, right? So we went through a series of these things from the founder's breakfast, and then we ended up with account receivable. And the reason it's account receivable was one of the founder that I was talking to during the early days. He told me, like, John, I don't think I can help you. I would like to give you my time to solve my delinquency invoices or the debt side of the business. Why don't you help me manage my receivables to make sure that it won't go to a delinquent stage, right? And that's hence we started with accounts receivable, and there are more now that we are doing for OCTA. And that's basically becomes the aha moment for us in regards of sticking with a pain point that we're solving. How did we end up with the team? It was so I met my co-founder Nupur. She's an amazing human being. She previously worked alongside with me in Careem. We both worked together, and I met her there. And I always said whenever I go to this leadership, it's like, oh my God, like Nupur it's a good operator, right? She could be a good candidate as a founder. And then in one point in time, we had a conversation, and she said, I would like to start a company as well. And I was already start thinking some ideas, and then I pitched some of the ideas, and she's like, sign me up, right? And that basically when we all started. We went through all the series of founder tests or co-founding tests, right? To make sure that we are aligned with personal values on how we see the company, right? About the idea. And one of the things that we did, Mai was actually joining the 500 startup program, right? Which is
Yes.
based out of Riyadh. It is yes, it's basically programmed by Sanabil. And I because I've been into the first cohort of Batch 500 or Sanabil 500 or 500 Global, there's a lot of value that I've got from that program. And I thought, like, it'll be very, very good for Nupur, my co-founder, to be part of the program.
Yeah.
And the value that that program provides. And so we actually signed up in 500 startup. And since then it's a very it's amazing journey. And we've learned a lot, right? I mean, it definitely took a lot of time to understand the business model that we would like to go through and the market and in understanding the relationship of the working relationship as well, right? And then eventually we met eventually we met our CTO. His name is Andrei Korchek. And Andrei Korchek built kind of adjacent business, but more on the infrastructure side. And then he raised money from the likes of Peter Thiel, Valor Ventures, and Third Time, and amazing human being, super technical guy. It's also geek like us. And when I pitched the idea and learn about the story and the mission of like building company or global company from the region, I was like, John, sign me up, right? I mean, it started as a stress test first, like let's do it for a week or two, and see if we like each other. And then eventually he did sign up, and it's like, yeah, he's on
That's
board.
amazing. That's amazing. I think just being conscious of time here, I think we need to jump into fundraising. So, Okta, you just announced recently that you closed your seed round of 2.2 million. Congratulations, well deserved. And tell us the story. I know you have a very well structured process for the fundraising, so I would love to hear it.
Definitely. I'm super excited. And in fact, when we decided that I would like to be part of this of Fireside Chat, my the thought process was actually to share the playbook that I'm working on. Eventually, we'll kind of publish that maybe this week or next week. But I think it's working. Like this playbook or this process actually works. But this process actually came from learnings from Denarii side. All right. So if you kind of hear the pattern of the conversation that we had, everything starts from like continuous communication and update, right?
Yes.
So I'll give you a little bit of the kind of the macro level of how did I end up raising $2.2 million, right? When we start the company, I have already start building the product, kind of prototype of, how it's gonna look like from the visual perspective side. So we already have kind of 2 months of work that was not published yet, right? So it's already we're cooking it on the side. And then when we announce that we're building in public and building a company, I've asked a couple of friends if they would like to be part of my weekly update. And this weekly update is a very, very standard one, right? It's like, this is my things that I would like to achieve next week. And this is what I achieved previous week. And this is what I need some help from, right? It's very three basic one. And then more on the narrative side. Given that it's an ideation stage, I don't have anything yet. It's just more on like storytelling side. So the first 2 months or 3 months, I have this weekly update that I'm sending that from the eyes of the reader, we are super fast, right? Like, oh, these guys were like, conviction is like super fast, right? It's like every week they have
Killing
something.
it.
They're killing, they're
They
crushing it,
love
right?
this.
They
I
love
love
it.
this. Yeah.
And then when I said like, and then some folks from the angel perspective or from the individual says like, hey, are you raising? And I said like, I'm not raising yet, right? But I start sensing some signal in terms of interest. When I found out like multiple individuals would like to participate, that's when I start creating a syndicate. And that syndicate allows me to collect small checks from my kind of champions, if you like, that people have seen that I do have a relationship from the past, that since the conviction of what we're building, right? So storytelling side, preparing the process, and then continuous update, eventually end up on my first ticket of angel investments, right? And then after I get my first $500,000, like I start warming up my VC. So it's the same conversation with VC, right? So it's like, hey VC, I'm building something. Do you would like to be part of this newsletter or the weekly update, right? And then one, from the other and so on, and then they kind of read the weekly update, and then they send me a message like, hey my man, right? I like the updates, like atypical VC in the region. And that's basically how I ended up attracting VC to participate, right? And and yeah, and then eventually, I have a story to tell about. Sukna Ventures was like one of like our early supporter when I was like pitching to Asher, and then 500 startup, and then eventually after the demo day we managed to close the remaining of the round, which is 1.2, and then we call out the whole round as a pre-seed at 2.25. So that's basically how we end up. And in fact, like this playbook that I've used, we're actually I've been kind of coaching few founders already, have raised money using the same playbook. I mean, it's like mind blowing. I mean, it's basically it's a continuous communication, right? But there's no shortcut in terms of the fundraising, but just putting the right momentum and the right process works well if you think it in that perspective.
Yeah. This is amazing. This is amazing. Congratulations, John. You deserve it. You worked so hard for this. And I think the learning actually from this story is building momentum and communication. Like it doesn't happen overnight. You don't pump into a VC in a networking event and he wires the money the next day. It's a very long process. And I think I think especially now, given everything that's happening in the market, so relationships is actually much more important and appreciated, especially early on in your journey, because you don't have a lot of like track record when it comes to revenues or customers signing up or things like that. And there will be something that's breaking somehow, and it's okay at this stage. It's fine. It's just you need to keep like moving, and you need to show that to investors to believe in that whatever comes your way, you will actually be able to do it or overcome it.
I completely
I think
agree.
this is the biggest takeaway for me.
I think, yeah, I think I completely agree with that. I think it's like continuous communication is very, very important. Like there's a lot of nuances as an expat raising money from the region, right? And I think that nuances something that I'm going to explain in the playbook, but like the relationship and trust is very, very important here, right? And
I
and you
can
can,
say everywhere. I'm
yeah,
um
yeah,
I'm based in the UK right now, and yeah, I I can say it's the
okay,
same. In some regions, I think maybe in the US it's a little bit different
yeah,
because the environment is different, but I think everywhere else in the
yeah.
world, relationships is very important.
I don't think it is the time like in 2020, like 2019, 2020, where like the foam were super, super high, right? That like any ideas is actually investable. But I think now it requires tenacity and grit to basically and build with conviction is very, very important
Yeah.
on this. Right? And I think and I did use that as in my advantage, right? And then I saw that's an opportunity to put a process like that. And I mean it works for me. I mean the hard part is building the business, right?
Yes, of course. Um, this was great. Thank you so much, John. I hope it was informative, and we tried to put some structure to how to exit your company or what to expect if you have this in mind. So for everyone who stuck around so far, I think we have a lot of questions on the Q&A, so we'll jump in and answer this. So let's see. Okay, the first one, we have like four questions in one. Is it a must to raise multiple rounds of investment series B or C before being acquired? No. Short
Yeah.
answer. No. Uh, which stage were you in when you
We are
Denarii
on
got
the
acquired?
we are on the
Seed
pre-A. We are in the
pre-A.
pre-A.
Yeah, I think same for Eventtus. No, we actually raised an A, so it was Series A round. Is it possible for a startup to get acquired without getting Series A investment? Yes, I think to put some structure in here, I think you need to have a story for who will acquire your company, why they're acquiring your company, and what's in it for them. So we see a lot of like acqui-hires. So you have a team who's building and they know how to work together and they are great at building products. And it's very similar to a challenge like Denarii. You build this, you have the experience, you have the know-how, you have the knowledge, and you have the team that actually knows how to work together, which is very, very critical. And I think it's somehow overlooked. People don't talk about it a lot, but building a coherent team that actually knows how to work and deliver together is very important. So I think this is where Careem saw an opportunity and acquired Denarii. Eventtus was maybe a little different, but also the team was very important. But we were building something complementary to what Bevy wants to build. They were building a platform for community events, and it was COVID. We were building for in-person events, and then we shifted into virtual events, but we were very strong on the mobile front, and they didn't have any mobile experience. And we knew that after a couple of years, people are going back to normal. So we'll have this hybrid events. So we needed to build a solution for the hybrid experience. So integrating the two solutions together, it made sense. So it was more of like a coming up with a different product that will strengthen the offering for the two companies. So I think you need to think about it from this. There's other uh, scenarios as well, but maybe you can come up with this for whoever is interested to buy the company. If yes, is seeking acquisition a possible alternative strategy instead of seeking investors, especially if founders want to exit? What do you think?
I mean, it's an option, right? I don't think you limit yourself in terms of whether you would like to be acquired, right? Or if you want to be, or you would like to raise money, right? I think it's your appetite depending on the company that you're building, depending on the business, right? Is this investable, right? Is this a lifestyle business that someone's actually interested to acquire, right? So there's a lot of factors, but again, it's you have the freedom to make a decision.
Yep.
But to answer your question, you can do both.
Yeah. And the last question is also the same. Okay. As founders, how did you manage the stressful times and heavy workload during the acquisition phase, especially when it pressured your personal time and family time? I
I can,
didn't.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think for me, if you love what you're doing, I mean, I think it's kind of completely different stress, right? At times, I think we did sign up for that, or I did sign up for that type of like
100%.
kind of emotional roller coaster per se. But from managing stress and overall, I think one very, very important is get the right people around you, right? That's number one. Number two is don't hesitate to reach out to other founders who are actually doing similar things, in that space. So, for example, if you are at a pre-seed stage or if you are a seed stage, talk to other seed stage founders, right? Because most likely they experience what we experience as well, and that actually helps a lot navigating the stress times. And 500 startup, shout out to 500, but 500 Global were very, very supportive as a community to basically
Yes,
have this supporting mechanism.
I second that.
And then, of course, family is also important. So I think that's how I manage the stress. Yeah.
Yeah, same. I would say support system. It's very hard, and before starting a company, you need to know that this is what you sign up for. Sometimes it's harder than other times, but it's part of the process, and this adrenaline is actually part of the process as well, and why we love it. Okay, another question. Very informative. Thanks a lot for organizing this. Can you do one for first-time founders? How to navigate the beginning from idea to product building and eventually to product market fit? Megan, thank you. This is great idea. Jon, do you want to chime in here and give a couple of pointers?
No, of course. I think sometimes if you start reading a lot of like article in the internet, right, and ask a lot of people, it's not basically a rocket science, right? I think the first thing that you would do is go out there and talk to people, and then ask about what do you do like for work, what are the pain points that you're experiencing. I think start by talking to people, and then if you do these things habitually, right, with an intention to build a company, like this type of pain point or pattern recognition from the problem per se will emerge and will come out. And then you start doubling down, right? And start validating that from one person to another person. And it's like, hey, have you experienced this problem in collecting payments or invoice payments, right? How are you currently doing it? Are you using multiple tools, right? And kind of doubling those ones until that pattern starts to come out. And that's the best way to do it, right? I don't think there is an article that actually you could use. I think it's just like basic talking to people or talking to customer. Eventually, we'll start from creating the ideas, right? Mai, anything to add in there?
100%. Exactly what we did, even with Ginni. Like we started talking. Like again, I knew I want to build in this space, but what exactly? This is when you need to figure it out. So I started reaching out to a lot of founders, my friends, who have B2B companies or their sales teams. I even posted on LinkedIn. I think I posted something on LinkedIn and I actually added a link to my Calendly account. And in 3 days, I had around 45 meetings. So it was 3 full days, 30 minutes meetings every day for full day. And I had to like shut it down because like it was too much. But the more you talk to people is the more you learn about what you want to build. Yeah, so I think that's it. Okay, question from Omar. Hi, Omar. Great to have you here. Omar was my guest for the last webinar. So hi, Omar and Jon. Great conversations. What learnings, relationships, experiences have been most valuable in building your second startup? Uh, I think the biggest learning, I would say, is you know what to expect and you know where to ask for help or how
Yes.
to ask for help. So you
Yeah.
have this network and you know that you need to actually give at the beginning. So helping other founders, it will eventually come your way because they will be great, they will make it, they will build their companies. And when you have a question for them or when you need their help in something or you need that connection to someone, VC, customer, or anyone, they will make it for you. So having intentionally being conscious about building relationships for relationships, I think is very important. Jon, anything?
I think it's the same one word that I kind of thought about when I was reading this question was like actually help, right? Don't shy away of asking help. It's something that I've learned a lot,
Yes.
as a second time founder. And don't shy about sharing your experience, right? And I think be open about it. Especially to, like as I always said, founders talk to other founders and in genuine way, right? Yeah, I think, don't mind asking for help. I think that's definitely one.
Yeah. Okay, we're over time. We'll take a couple more minutes to answer these questions. What was your process when looking for problems to solve for your second company? I think we answered this already.
Yeah, I think that's.
Jon, you have chosen to build in public this time. How are you finding it?
I like this one. I'll do it very, very quickly. I think the reason I did the building in public, my experience as a first-time founder and a second-time founder, I've learned that fundraising between the relationship of investor and founder, there's an imbalance of power dynamics, right? So for me, whenever I remember when I pitched my previous idea to VC, it's only pushing information and not getting something out of those relationships that I'm actually building, right? Um, and so it's kind of one-way interaction. And hence, my thought process in building Okta was like, why don't we share that so that the information flow is balanced with everyone? So everyone knows macro level of what's happening to Okta and then show some exciting part to the people that I talk to. So that's the reason I actually that's the reason I actually did the building in public. It helps, I think it helps me a lot, being accountable on what I do, right? Getting customers from inbound as well, and getting help, and getting from Fireside Chat with Mai is also part of the building in public.
Yes. Okay. One more question. Thank you, both, for the insightful and transparent discussion. Could you please share some do's and don'ts for the acquisition negotiation process? Yes, this is a good one. Uh, what do you think?
Sorry, which question are you looking at?
Could you share some do's and don'ts for acquisition negotiation process?
Okay.
I think I can share one quickly is you need to understand that there is limits to what you can negotiate or what the other party can accept. And you need to understand this limit or try to sense that limit early on. So you know what is like the must have that you need to negotiate and what you can like just let it go. It's not that important. And don't try to be too pushy. You need to understand that this is a relationship, this is a partnership.
Mm.
You are actually most of the time, I would say 95% of the time, you are going to join this company. It will be a relationship, and the company that acquire you, the founders and everyone involved, they will be your new, as similar as investors. They will be your friends, your partners. You'll work with them. Actually, like we have great relationship with Derek and the rest of the Bevy team. So Derek actually is one of our angel investors and probably one of the first few people that I spoke to when I come up with the idea of Ginni. So having this, thinking about it again, it's a relationship. It's not the end of the world. This is one step in a very long process that will help you like make decisions and know when to push and when to just like let it go.
I completely agree. I think just to add up on that one, my get a lawyer. That's the
Of
second part. But
course,
the
yeah,
first part,
yeah. A very
the
good
first
lawyer.
a very, very good lawyer. And then I completely the first part would be intentional, right? So it's because it's a relationship driven, especially even in the acquisition side, when founder talks to other founder, whatever size the company is, in my opinion, based on my experience, um, just be open about the non-negotiable part, right? And if the non-negotiable part would be making the team are looking after and or the exit with the investors and for your sake as well as a founder, put the non-negotiable part. And then once both founders agreed, get a good founders to kind of, negotiate as part of that benchmark, right? So that I would say the do's and the don'ts.
I would actually add one more thing. Don't hide anything. Be transparent. Be fully
Yeah,
transparent from the beginning. If you don't have to like hide your financials or your code base or anything, that if you have a problem, if you have a challenge, if you have something legally in the company that's you need to disclose, just disclose it early on. It will save you tons of time and
yeah.
money and lawyer time and costs later on. I think this is the biggest learning also, I would say. Okay, we have time for one last question, which is if you will put the reason for selling your company in one word, what will it be? Why did you sell Denarii in one word?
Um, I would say, I would
It's
say
hard.
time. I would
This is a
say,
hard question.
I would say timing. I would say timing. If I put one reason for selling your company in one word, I think it's timing, right? Um,
Yeah, same here. Yeah, yeah. It was post-COVID. We knew that if we sell the company at this time, it's actually the best chances for us, given the changes in the market. And we have seen somehow we were predicting like the changes that will happen to the market after that. So yeah, I second that.
what does
Okay,
make us think? I like it. Thanks, Malas, for the question.